Welcome. And today I'll share with you a reading of a fantastic story that we found on Reddit. It's titled, I Once Knew a Woman Who Never Took Off Her Wedding Dress. I know you're going to love it. Hi, this is Derek. I just put the Drama Llama, Fred, back in his pen so that I can do this quick video for you with some of the stuff that Fred found on Reddit earlier today. If this is your first time watching our videos, help me out by watching to the end, and then giving me some feedback in the comment area below. I do respond to every single one, so don't be shy. And if you want more of these videos daily, don't forget to like and subscribe, with notifications turned on for this channel. Oh boy, let's get ready for a great story.
I once knew a woman who never took off her wedding dress. Written by Polonium Poisoning. And adapted and enhanced by Fred, the Drama Llama. I've known Pauline from a young age. She lived across the street and was 5 years older than me. I remember seeing her on her porch, watering the plants with unusual attention and care, like a mother lulling her child to sleep. Her long, honey blonde hair shone under the sunlight, her white skin looked like a clear canvas, and pure innocence had sated her wide, blue eyes. She will make any man crazy, was the thought that would pop into my mind while I watched her dress fluttering in the breeze and her thin fingers gliding on the flowers, caressing them. Whispers would leave her lips as she talked to the plants. I could imagine how big her heart was. She loved everything and everyone around her. Hello? Pauline would wave her hand as she'd notice me outside. I'd wave back and turn around. That was all. Something hindered me from crossing the street and approaching her to have a conversation over a cup of tea. I felt like she was unworldly, too pure for me, and I could never find something in common with her. I was a wild kid, always running around, with my knees bleeding, getting into childish fights, always looking for something to damage. It felt like Pauline and I were from two completely different worlds that could never cross each other. But I was mistaken. When you are a kid, a 5-year age gap means a lot. So, for me, Pauline was always older, someone who babysat me instead of playing with me. I don't remember her taking care of me, but my mother told me Pauline was the best nanny I've ever had, and I loved being with her. She's such an extraordinary kid. Something is very special in her, that's what Pauline had apparently said about me. These words flattered me, of course, and now as I was an adult, I considered getting closer to her. I was in college, living with my parents, so seeing Pauline going shopping, washing her car, or reading in her garden wasn't unusual. Pauline's and my parents had been friends since we had moved into the neighborhood. My mother always tried to spark a friendship between us to help me step over the boundary and talk to Pauline, but her attempts were always unsuccessful. Until one day. Pauline's engaged, said my mom, returned from the grocery store, she has a bridal shower today. She put the packages on the kitchen table, and while putting vegetables in the fridge, she peeped at me. You know, she asked me to tell you that you are invited, said my mom, it would be great if you'd go. Pauline will be thrilled, and you have nothing to do, after all. My mom always thought I spent too much time around boys and needed to be more feminine. She thought Pauline could be a perfect role model. But that day, she was right. It was Saturday and I had spent the morning playing on my phone. What bad could a visit to Pauline do? Maybe I'd even have some fun. I was 21 and bored anyway. Okay, I said, surprising my mother, I'll go. In a few hours, I stood at the door with baked cookies, of course, my mother's. I had finally crossed the street. As I knocked on the door, Pauline opened up with a broad smile, inviting me in. Oh, I'm so happy you came, she exclaimed and pointed at her friends sitting in the living room. Everyone, this is Anne. The room had been decorated with white flowers and balloons. I had never been to a bridal shower, but this was really out of my style. I decided to go with the flow and join the conversation. As we drank a little champagne, Pauline smiled, putting down her glass. Aiden and I had made a blood oath, she said suddenly. Aiden was her fiancé. You what? One of her friends asked, and everyone giggled, but Pauline seemed serious. The first to die comes and takes the other as soon as they can, she explained, gently swirling the ruby ring around her finger. Isn't that too dramatic? I asked, trying to hide my cynicism. What if you end up divorcing and marrying other people? We won't. We are soulmates, Pauline assured me. Her voice was so clear, you couldn't doubt her words. I believe that you can wake up in the afterlife and start controlling things with your mind. I held in my chuckle, listening to her with a stern expression. Of course, your memories will be hazy, she clarified, but that's why we made the blood oath. So we can remember each other. And how will one actually get back to the other? I asked, playing along. I like to believe that we'll both grow wings, Pauline replied with a sweet smile. It sounded so silly, I hardly held myself back from bursting into laughter. But as if hypnotized, somehow everyone paid attention to Pauline. She was as naive as a little kid, and it gained some kind of attractive innocence to her. But still, it felt strange when someone older, someone my mom considered the best role model, said such childish things. Pauline kept talking about Aiden with a dreamy tone, mentioning him in every other sentence. I wish Aiden were here. Aiden would like this. Oh heck no, Aiden wouldn't go for that. And so on. As I watched her eyes sparkle and her voice get softer as if she was flying into clouds, doubts sneaked into my heart. Maybe she was right. Perhaps soulmates existed, and you could make the person you love follow you. Even after death. I spent that night with Pauline and realized that the age gap didn't matter anymore, and if not more, I could at least help her with the wedding preparations. The next day I followed her to the dress fitting, then to cake tasting, then to choose the decorations, and before I knew it, I was deep into the responsibility of helping her plan her entire wedding. But somehow it was pleasant. Even fun. Pauline was patient and kind, discussing everything with a clear mind, nothing like the brides who freak out and make everyone spin around them. One day when we were about to leave for the dress, Aiden came, visiting his bride. As soon as they looked at each other, the whole world melted in their eyes. They were obviously head over heels for one another. Aiden couldn't turn his eyes away from Pauline as she hugged him, telling him about the wedding preparations. As I watched them, a warm feeling poured into my heart. Ah. Young love. I wish I had that. There was no doubt, their love would never fade. I've realized why Pauline believed in soulmates. They looked like one soul in two bodies. The wedding day finally came, half a year later, after the bridal shower. Elation had filled Pauline up. I can't wait to put the ring on Aiden's finger and say the vow, cry with him and kiss him under the falling rose leaves, she said to me in the car, headed to the church. As we arrived, the people had stood up, and the priest had prepared his speech. White flowers had covered the floor and yellow candles brightened the place. It was neither a big nor a small wedding, it felt like both Pauline and Aiden invited their loved ones. Not one more, not one less. I felt somewhat honored to be there. The white, sparkling silky dress adorned Pauline. She had never looked so beautiful. But still, the happiest day never came. When Pauline arrived, belated as any bride should, whispers and murmurs pierced the silence. Aiden wasn't there yet. Pauline's smile didn't falter. She was completely sure that Aiden would never leave her. But I could tell she was worried. I could see a concern and stress begin to form across her face. The bridesmaids, her two closest friends since high school, started making calls while Pauline waited patiently. Suddenly we saw Aiden's parents approaching us. Nicholas isn't here, said Aiden's mother. Nicholas was Aiden's brother. He was supposed to drive Aiden to the wedding as he was his best man. As the worry grew bigger, we heard the police sirens approaching in the distance. My heart sank in my stomach, and a dreadful feeling crawled from the back of my head. I am so sorry, ma'am, there was an accident, said the police officer. I felt Pauline's hand gripping mine, holding on to me not to fall. Whoa. What? Uttered Pauline. As the officer continued to explain, it was like every word was distorted and nonsensical but clearly understandable at the same time. The sensible version of the recounting went something like, A black limousine transporting the groom and best man was driving along Tivoli Bridge when the driver of a sports car, traveling in the opposite direction, tried to hastily pass another car. He crashed head-on into the limousine. The impact forced the limousine off the bridge, and it plummeted to the ravine below. The men in the limousine were found a few feet from the point of impact. It seems they weren't wearing seatbelts and fell out of the car while it ricocheted and tumbled on the way down. Only one of the occupants survived and was taken to the hospital, but his state is critical and he's currently undergoing emergency surgery. Pauline collapsed on her knees, trembling. We didn't know which one survived, Aiden or Nicholas. One death was already a great tragedy, but deep in my heart, I really wanted Aiden to be the survivor. Ma'am, are you okay? Ma'am? I'm really sorry to ask, but we need you to come with us to identify the body. Along with her mother, she asked me to go with her. How could I say no? As they put up the cover from the body, Pauline turned around, digging her face in her palms, crying. It's Aiden, she whispered. I slowly looked at Aiden. I could hardly recognize him with a bruised face, blood smudged all over it, broken nose and reddened skin. I had never seen anything so terrifying, and I could imagine how Pauline felt. Her heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Nicholas survived, but he'll have tetraplegia his whole life due to severe injury to his spinal cord and his crushed limbs. But how can someone keep on living, knowing his brother died and not him? I knew Nicholas wished he could trade places with Aiden. Aiden's funeral was the saddest thing, to the point of being scary. Like funerals in horror movies. Unbearable silence had ensued while people stared at the closed casket. Pauline wasn't crying but stood frozen like a statue. As if unable to move from shock. Right after the funeral, Aiden's parents sold the house they had bought for Pauline and him. Pauline moved back to her parents' home. They took a break from work to take care of their daughter, but the vacation couldn't last forever. They needed to provide for the family. So, as Pauline's parents got back to work, her friends and I started taking turns, keeping her company, while they weren't home. I tried my best to cheer her up and make her forget the tragedy for a bit. But nothing worked. I sat next to Pauline, her body was there, right beside me. But she was far, far away. Her mind was flying into illusions, old memories of Aiden. The time she spent with him, or an unrealistic, happy future that she would never have. I never saw such a deep and heart-wrenching sadness. Pauline refused to take off her wedding dress. She was not eating, drinking, or talking, but waiting for Aiden at the window during the day and crying during the night. She became skinny. Her skin lost its glow, her shining hair faded, she withered like a flower. Once glorious. Now plain. I could never imagine Pauline's beauty disappearing, but it happened. The death of her love robbed her of her charm. It is a matter of time until Aiden wakes up on the other side, said Pauline once, standing at the window, and remembers to bring me along. I walked up to her, looking at her face. Her eyes were blank. Vacant as if someone had sucked the soul out of her body. Cold shivers ran down my spine. And I turned my head away to not show my sadness to her. That's why you don't take the wedding dress off? I asked quietly. Yes, Pauline answered. Her voice, once melodious and soft, was now hoarse and deep from crying. He died in his wedding suit, so I want to be in my dress too. Pauline spent every day wearing the dress, even slept in it. Everyone tried to coax her into taking it off, but Pauline didn't want to hear anything. Please, honey, her mother would say with teary eyes, you can have it by your side for when Aiden comes. I know you are just saying it to make me take it off, Pauline would say with so much anger that I had never seen in her. You don't believe that Aiden will come. The once beautiful organza and silk were now ragged, grimy, reeking of dirt and sweat. Aiden won't be able to spot me if I'm not wearing it, Pauline would say, turn her back at us and look up at the sky from the open window. It was impossible to change her mind, and even though she was seeing a therapist 3 times a week, she wasn't improving. Her mourning and PTSD were turning into a darker, more permanent mental illness. One day when I walked into her room, I saw her leaning on the window, talking to herself. She was almost whispering, so I couldn't make the words out, but I heard her mutter Aiden repeatedly. Pauline, I called her, terrified. What are you doing? Startled by my voice, she turned around. At first, she looked like a scared kid, caught on stealing sweets. Then she smiled and approached me. Her smile, which I loved the most about her, was now horrifying. She wasn't the Pauline I had known since I was a kid. She was someone else. Just an empty shell left from her real self. I was talking to Aiden, she said. He is nearby, I can feel him coming. He is just taking a while because flying is tough when your wings are newly acquired. I just nodded, unable to find the right words. Sadness spread roots in my heart as I realized I was losing Pauline. The next morning, she disappeared. No one saw her leaving, and we haven't seen her since. She had vanished without a trace. No letter. No message. Nothing. As if she had never existed. After searching in her house for anything that could lead us to her whereabouts, we gave up. There was no trail. Even after putting the police on it, we were as empty-handed as at the beginning. The only thing that we could find in the small grove behind the house was her filthy wedding dress. It had 2 large holes poked at the back, as though it had grown wings. After finding the dress, everyone who loved Pauline was relieved. Perhaps Aiden really came back to Pauline and took her with him, said her mother, crying, with a sad smile. Others didn't believe the supernatural explanation. But thinking that there was even a chance of it happening brought us a sense of closure. It was the only answer, and we had no other choice but to accept it. We unconsciously wanted to believe it, because Pauline's wish coming true was the only way for her story to have a happy ending. We wanted to think that Pauline had finally found her peace. She was an angel, after all. Why wouldn't she grow wings and escape the prison of her body? The family held a beautiful memorial service in her honor and, even though it was hard, we all slowly started moving on with our lives. Pauline would always have a place in our hearts, but we needed to let her go to keep on. And we did so. Now, you might ask what I believe really happened. I would laugh bitterly because I don't have a choice to begin with. Being the person who spent the most time watching Pauline during those terrible days, it was only natural that I was the one that found her dead in the bathtub. Hiding and subsequently getting rid of her body was the hardest thing I have ever done, but I had some knowledge as a criminology major. I had studied how murderers get rid of a body, what cleaning equipment they use in order to not leave any trace. Tampering with the dress, though, felt eerily healing. Still, I think that she would be pleased to know that I faked her rapture. A romantic and mystifying death fits her way more than a suicide.
What are your thoughts on polonium poisoning's adapted story? Please share in the comments below. I think Op did a noble thing. Her relationship with Pauline blossomed into true friendship. Pauline pretty much died that day with Aiden, so nothing good could come from having her deep sorrow to eternally be a bad memory for everyone. This way, Op made sure that Pauline will be remembered fondly as that vibrant, bubbly girl she was, before the accident. In the meantime, let's hear what some other Reddit members had to say about the original story. Muskan Rajan reacted with, "What am I supposed to feel? Op did a good thing. Like a friend erasing your porn history. But, more hopeful or something." Dragon Druid reacted with, "In taking that burden on yourself, you healed everyone else involved. I think you're the angel here. This was hauntingly beautiful." Same. That's the only way I could possibly describe it. Kasvani reacted with, "Maybe Aiden never found her. Because he never saw her in the wedding dress? He didn't know who to look for." Them J Silva reacted with, "My heart is crumbling right now. I know how it feels to love deeply, to love with devotion and passion. I know how hard it is to lose someone you love. For Pauline, I know her pain was too much to take. I feel for her. I know what she went through. Just like her, I've lost the person that I love the most. Although I have survived the ordeal, but it left a huge scar in my heart. And on my wrist. Little Queen Beanie reacted with, I still hope that she found him in death and finally had the time with him she deserved. This is so good. It makes one believe in true love. I hate how sad Pauline was over losing Aiden, but I can't say I wouldn't be any different if I lost my husband, who is my best friend and soulmate. Soulmates really exist. I can attest to that. I'm living it. Well, there you have it. A very interesting and shocking story from a fine and talented Reddit member. Help support this channel by smashing the like and subscribe buttons. And hit that silly little bell as well to ensure you get the latest videos as they come out. Fred is always finding stuff for me to post regularly. So this is Derek signing off. Thanks for watching. Good grief, it sounds like Fred is out of his pen again. He must have found more stories for us to share with you. See you soon.